Wantedly's mission is to create a world where work drives passion. Right? Food is like brings us all together. In Japan, decisions are not made in meetings, not at all whatsoever. My German personality always wants to break through. Hi. First of all, thank you for coming. Most of you won't know Wantedly. I'm pretty sure nobody knows me. So just quickly about myself. My name is Christian. I'm the country manager for Wantedly, which is a recruitment platform and employer branding platform, like Goodpatch from Japan. We launched last year here. My background, though, is not in design whatsoever. But I have the pleasure to bring the product over. I used to live in Asia during my 20s for, I think, 6-7 years in total. 5 years of that in Thailand. I met my wife there. And have been then back to Germany. I worked for Google for a while, for Viessmann, which is an energy company here, family run. And now for a year for Wantedly. So we have a very small team here currently. But it's a very exciting journey and a very complicated one to work across different cultures, and that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit. So what's actually Wantedly? Wantedly's mission is to create a world where work drives passion. How we interpret that means we believe very deeply that everybody can have a more fulfilled and better life if they work on products, if they work on things they really truly care about. Studies show that most people don't. That's a very sad state of affairs, actually. Most people are really in deadbeat jobs and they just want to go out and they don't know how, or they don't even know what's out there, right? It's probably not so much for designers, like I guess most of you are. Actually, Christoph told me he studied something that didn't interest him in the long run, and he changed. He taught himself UX design, was introduced through using Photoshop a lot. But if you are in marketing or in a very traditional firm, very often you don't have the chance. And when you try to change a job, your problem usually is that you have all those job posts, but it's just text, it's a wish list of the company, you can't really look into that. So we are going to change that. And we have in Japan, a country where you usually don't change jobs at all, and where it's very hierarchical, right? So, and Japan is notoriously famous for long working hours. And so it's kind of difficult to change these kind of environments. And Wantedly has. In Japan, it is one of the largest job platforms, and we allow companies to use storytelling, videos, teams, and meetups really to get people into the office and just chat about what jobs are available, get to know the team, and see and learn what's actually going. So we have in Japan 4 different products. In Germany, we only have one, and that's Wantedly Visit. So the visit comes from actually being able to visit the offices. And that's what we have been bringing to Germany in the last year, translating in it. So. This journey is quite difficult, and I'll come to that in a bit. But why actually food? Why did I choose the title of the spaghettirice conundrum? So I think, so for once, when I lived in Thailand, I met my now wife through dinner, and there was a lot of puzzling conflicts, and it always resolves around food, right? Food is like brings us all together in one way. But at the same time, it shows really differences in culture as well. If you go to a German supermarket, for instance, it's dominated by discounters. So it's super cheap. It's like mass. It's not very attractive, but you walk through, you buy, you go home. If you go to a Japanese supermarket, they treat food like it's the most precious thing in the world. Every individual fruit is packaged in itself. It's like you have to go into the store to to be able to believe that. It's really impressive. And I used to live in Thailand, as I said. If you go to a Tesco's, which are huge, and you go to the meat section, it's more like an outside market with a roof and an aircon. So it's really interesting how food and how we deal with food actually translates. And that's also reflected in how we actually make decisions, and how when you bring a product over from, in our case, Japan, that impacts how decisions are made, how consensus is found, and how you deal with all those things. So Nimawashi and Ringi are in Japan, and I hope I actually pronounced this correctly, are in Japan methods of finding consensus. So here in Germany or in Europe, it's a very straightforward process, right? Communication is very open, and it's a very rational decision that we usually take. In Japan, decisions are not made in meetings, not at all whatsoever. You literally need to sponsor. So the way it works is you have an idea or a proposal, and then you walk around, and you basically try to find allies. And once you have found allies, hopefully, then there's an official process of this, where this goes from hierarchy to hierarchy level, until then finally consensus is reached or not. But there's also no open dialogue when someone disagrees. And just more like, okay, well, I'm not responsible, I just don't say anything. So it's very, very difficult to actually gauge, for a European at least, how to deal with that. And then imagine there's this time difference, and you are not in the office over there, right? But you have to make a decision, let's say, on what translations do you use, or what features do you bring over first. And for European in particular, when I was doing the first time, I was like, just went into the meeting saying, okay, I need this, 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 and this, and I expect this to be done. Like, straightforward, it's a rational decision, it's the easiest things to do, whatnot. Yeah, didn't happen. And that's really, so this is really an art form. Here it's really easy, but here it's an art form. In Thailand, again, it's completely different. In Thailand, you have the most senior person in the room, nobody else speaks, and he makes the decision. But at the same time, if you're in a personal situation, you can voice your opinions. So again, completely different. And I think that this is really, really interesting. Particularly, we always say there are so many similarities, for instance, between Japan and Germany, right? But actually, this decision-making process still, I don't know, I still can't get to it, because my German personality always wants to break through, and just wants to run into the wall, and basically a Japanese wall, and just push it through. It's impossible. It's really, I really learned a lot for that, and it's something you really need to take care of. That's actually the second thing. That's also very German. So if you look in how social media is used, right? So we have, in Germany, we have Xing, we have LinkedIn. In Japan, LinkedIn is basically non-existent. So it's really, really small. In Japan, they use Facebook for business use as well. And here we actually divide these kind of things, right? So we have our personal life and we have our business life. And that's how we actually also are in the business side, right? So we just say, oh, well, that's the rational decision, let's do that. And it's never personal. And I can tell you, I don't like what you have done, but we can still drink a beer afterwards. I'll give you an example of when I lived in Thailand. Because I was 23, I think. Was there for half a year or so. And I had a colleague, similar to my age, I think 2-3 years older, we had the same position. And my boss, she gave us, I think, a task of doing something for an event, and basically she wanted to know whether we have to have this in Thai and in English. And my colleague, he said, well, I think English is fine. I was like, no, we need to have this in all languages because the average Thai doesn't speak very well in English, and we want a huge audience for this event. So for me, it was fine. I just disagreed, and I didn't think about that much, right? But he was looking for consensus. I didn't understand that at the time at all. So we went into the meeting with my boss, and she's like, so what do we do? And he said, well, I want this, I think Thai is fine, English is fine. I said, no, we have to do both. And he got extremely angry because, well, there was no consensus, right? He felt offended. He was older than me. I disagreed with him in front of our boss. He wouldn't talk to me for 3 months. And I did not, for the life of me, I did not understand this. I was just, what did I do? I didn't do anything. And it's very similar in Japan. Maybe not to that extent, but it's still very similar. Consensus and the group is more important than the individual. And so when you deal with these kind of things, then you really have to consider how everybody else feels. And it's on the one hand, it's very nice. On the other hand, it can slow things down extremely, right? So if you actually see this, the process in Japan is very slow, I'd say, because you need so much consensus. And then you have actually to be careful not to offend anyone. It's like, oh my, this can take time. This is something I think, product expectations and appetite for adoption. I think Christoph will talk about that as well. But if you come to Germany, our product adoption here usually is rather slow. And we have really high expectations. It's at least what I've experienced bringing this product here. For once, because in Asia, they just try things out constantly. Change is so fast, right? They just leapfrog us on so many levels all the time. Here in Germany, we are way more, we'll probably say, conservative. But it's also how we deal with certain things. So in Thailand, for example, there's a word len. Len means play. And you say len Facebook. So they literally play with the online platforms, right? They don't consider this as work or anything. Or as a tool to be used for something. It's literally gaming and enjoyment. It's not the case here in Germany. We waste our time on Facebook, right? So we're just like scrolling through. It's not considered as necessarily as enjoyment. At the same time, the expectations here for a product often feel very, very high. When we go pitch Wantedly, we have the issue right now that we are obviously a small platform because we have only been here a year and we have started to sell this in March. So we can't say we have as much users as LinkedIn, for instance, or Stepstone or whatnot. And so theoretically, we could go through features. And then it comes, okay, what features do you have? Oh, you don't have this feature. Oh, you don't have this feature. It's not that the user will probably use those features, I just want them. And ideally, I want them at a low price. So that's really, the appetite for experimentation here is much lower than in Asia. That's also something, oh my God, this is actually a federal country. Oh no, wait, there's Europe, we can travel, we can do stuff. So that's it's actually a very big problem for us as an HR company, or an opportunity, depending on how you see this. But a lot of people that are not in Europe don't understand that. For us, it's a given, obviously. Probably most of you have been at Erasmus, or have studied internationally. Some of you, not from Germany, are working here now. In HR, that means huge opportunity, right? For us as a company, actually. But what happened was, so we thought, okay, in order to decrease user acquisition cost, we just advertise in Eastern Europe. We advertise in Spain. We advertise in Brazil. Well, it turns out nobody had thought about a platform where you maybe don't look at the IP address of the user when you determine which URL they go to. So whenever you did not have a German IP, you would go to a test website that we had set up, and users, nobody could use the platform. Took us a while to figure that out in Germany, because in Japan I didn't understand the problem. but right, it's the simple thing. And so we have this federal country where you have, in Berlin, you have lots of e-commerce companies. In Munich, you have lots of high-tech companies. In Stuttgart, you have lots of automobile companies. And then you have this fluency between countries on top of that. And nowadays, people from South America, if they are good designers, then they can easily get a visa for Germany. So it's a completely different mindset. If you are in Japan, there's 120 million people. It's a huge market. It's a developed country, but it's an island on its own somewhere in the Pacific. There's China, but China is not the best friend. So this completely different state, a completely different state of mind. They're very restrictive when it comes to actually people going into the country, particularly compared to Europe. If you look at Thailand, if you work there, every 90 days you have to go to the immigration and show your passport just to prove that you're still alive and there. If you don't have a work permit, you have to get out of the country, come back in. And so completely different mindsets. Obviously, in Southeast Asia, you have a trial to get the ASEAN, but that hasn't led to anything. And yes, you have different countries and different languages, so they have a little bit of an advantage when they come here. But still, it's very difficult for them to understand. So, to close, that's probably the one thing you should not do, right? So, yay, head through the wall like I sometimes still do. I think you have to be very, very respectful of cultures, and you have to see actually the potential that they bring with. And there's actually one example, and that's something I learned and that calmed me down a lot. It's a Thai word, or a Thai sentence called sabai sabai. Does anybody have heard of that? So sometimes you see the t-shirts maybe, it's sabai sabai. It just means let it go. Calm down, everything will be all right in the end. Just take a step back, evaluate the situation, look at the different perspectives that those teams bring. Our international team, I think now 8 or 9 different nationalities from all over the world. Japanese, Vietnamese, Indian, German, obviously. I think we have an Italian, we have Chinese, all multiple languages, very international. And I'm pretty sure you have been in similar situations or are in similar situations. And actually the most important thing, in my opinion, is just, try to take their point of view, take a step back, breathe, and then just try to find consensus in the most suitable way. Yeah, that's it for me. You can reach me at christian@wantedly.com if you want to have a beer. I'll be here later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Maybe you can stay here and grab the other mic, and you guys get to ask questions. Is there anyone that has a burning question right now?
Do you have any problems with languages here in Europe? Because there's also all the different countries that you work in.
Product-wise, yes. Actually, you're completely right. I forgot to mention that. One of the major issues is that we have this actually in Hong Kong as well for the Chinese market. It's Cantonese and English mostly, and here you have German, English, and then X languages, right? And one of the biggest problems is to have a multilingual platform actually, because a lot of companies, or actually most companies, either they write their job posts in English or they write them in German. But because we want to get away from classic job posts into storytelling, that does not necessarily translate into different languages. And the capability is not within the company. And so it's an absolute problem. So we work with third parties, obviously, to mitigate that, and then we try to figure out how to do this for the companies if they wish to. It still does not necessarily solve the problem on how language is presented and ordered for the different countries, but that's something we're currently working on.
Thank you very much. So we use in GoodPatch in Japan, we use Wantedly a lot. I actually joined GoodPatch 6 years ago through Wantedly. And this is
Success story. Listen to him.
and so I think in a year we hire like 50 people, and maybe 80% is through Wantedly. So I know the potential of the product. What I was wondering, since you now learn a lot of new things with a different target audience here, is there something that you were able to bring back to Japan which influenced the product in Japan? Let it be communication or anything around it?
Yes, so I think the concept of employer branding as a way of actually positioning the company, definitely. This is more a Western thing. That is just much more developed here locally. This is not as pronounced in Japan, probably because it's actually not a job market that is very fluid or mobile. Apart from that,
What do you mean exactly?
so in Japan, I don't think that people change as many jobs. So the market is not as developed for companies literally to have to do a lot of employer branding. So there's no, literally there is no market for that yet. And we are kind of building this, or have actually been building this without giving it a name. So that's definitely one thing. In terms of product itself, and I don't want to talk about the GDPR because that had a huge impact on Japan. Actually, it's a good point, because the GDPR, by all its flaws and all its problems it caused, the concept of being able to opt out of certain things, to delete your account and these kind of things, that actually improved, in my opinion, the product in Japan. And they have this now there as well. And a third thing is the meetup feature. So we did not used to have a feature to where you can organize events like this. Our original feature was the visit, so you can say the individual comes. But Facebook, which our original product was based on in the algorithm that you could see with whom are you actually working and would just draw all the information, would not actually allow us to do this here. And so we came up with the feature of Meetup, which is actually a testament also to you, because one of the first things you said when we originally came here was, this whole visiting thing that takes so much time, and I don't think we can do this here. And so, in a gathering like this, right? I mean, you actually just named the different job posts you have open. It makes a lot of sense. And so, in a way, yes, it had a huge influence of not only in Germany but also Singapore and Hong Kong.
I think this is really good to understand. So, like, I think the key feature of Wantedly is actually that you can casually meet for coffee, like. Meet for coffee is what it says in a Japanese product. Yeah. And that is nicer because you're not exactly applying. Maybe you can just start a conversation. So that is something, at the same time, I haven't seen in any other product here. But then people don't have so much time for coffee here. And
well, actually,
it's a charming way to apply to a company.
Yeah. I mean, people have time for coffee here, but I mean, you all know Germany is a very process-driven country. So if there is a process in place, then you rather not change it, right? And it's very optimized, and so the concept of coffee is a little bit difficult here.
Thanks. Maybe one more question? Yeah.
So, if I got that right, you described the German decision-making culture as being a little faster, if I got that right. But the experimentation culture, or the rate of experimentation in Asia is faster. So that seems somehow contradictory.
Yes. So when you try to find consensus in Japan, right? So the process of convincing people to actually agree that your idea is good and then to go through all those different levels is very slow. But people are generally very curious about things. So a company will like, okay, well, let's at least speak about this. Let's look at this. When you try to get a meeting with someone in, let's say, in Southeast Asia somewhere, or you need an introduction, that's the snap of a finger. That's really fast, and people are always curious of exploring opportunities and ideas. Here in Germany, it's much more. So you get also, okay, why? There's much more. How to say? I wouldn't say it's not really distrust. It's just reasons. You want a rationale to actually act, and so when it's not feelings based much, right? You don't want to do someone necessarily a favor in a business setting in particular. And so when we pitch Wantedly here, for instance, then it's always like, yeah, I like the concept and would love to try it out. But, for instance, we do photo shootings, video shooting, and so on. We do this in-house. So where's actually the value add you have, right? Oh yeah, we do this already. Okay, what's the reach? Well, the reach is smaller than LinkedIn. So what's the opportunity there? So there's no immediate improvement of the process. In fact, it takes more time to use us because you have to try this out. And the Germans, or mostly Germans in this case actually, they are taken aback by that, and they don't try to experiment. So, here, for instance, we got rid of free trials. We got rid of free trials here because they will sign up, maybe, but we wouldn't get a lot of inbound in general. But then they sign up and they don't try it out because they see the steps process and they say, oh, it's too much work. They're not naturally less curious almost in Asia, particularly in Singapore and Hong Kong. Like people just go into the free trial and put 2 or 3 things out and they just try it out, and it's like they can't lose anything, so why not? And here it's a bit different in this case.
Thank you. Let's give Christian a big round of applause.